Thank you to eFulfillment Service for sponsoring today's video. Check them out if you plan on publishing your own board game so they can handle the logistics of getting your game out into the world. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of my Designer POV series. This is a series where I take you along the process of making a board game, all the way from the concept up to ideally pitching and maybe getting it published, or archiving it and moving on to something else if it doesn't work out, which is completely part of the process and not entirely unlikely. So this is the digital prototype I have been working on for the past few days. If you've been following along this series, you'll know that I have been showing my paper prototypes up until this video. So in this video, I am going to go through and show you the programs I used to make this digital prototype. This won't be a tutorial. I likely will do a tutorial on Dextrous in the future, which is one of the programs I use to make this digital prototype. But today I am going to briefly talk about using Dextrous and Tabletopia to make this digital prototype. And then I'm going to talk about the changes that I've made to the gameplay since my last video. All right, so let me show you Dextrous. So this is Dextrous. This is the main page. And so I created a project for my game called The Stolen Crown. And these are all of the components that I made for this. And each of them has their own layout. And so these are the ally cards that I made for the game. And if I click on this button here, Edit Layout, this is where I created this layout that appears on every single one of the cards. And there are fields here. These are image fields, and then there's also text fields. And so this information is being pulled from this spreadsheet here. And so this is where I have all of the information for the cards. So this is my allies spreadsheet. And so this is being pulled into this layout, which then creates all of the ally cards here. So you can see down here, my spreadsheet is duplicated down here, but I make any changes in my Google Sheets spreadsheet. So I'll quickly show you the components that I made. I made ally cards, loot tiles. These are when you secure a city. It's the stuff that you get. The player mat, city cards. This shows like where Steven's soldiers get placed, get deployed. And then these are the different action tracks that you can upgrade on your player mat. These took a long time, not gonna lie. These took a long time. I feel like I possibly could have done them slightly faster in Google Draw just because I'm more familiar with that program, and I did have to do these one at a time because they are unique layouts. But it's all good. And then these are the event cards. So these are the different sort of scenarios that can come up during a game. And then I made the reference card as well. One thing I did not make in Dextrous is the board. So I did not see a way to make curved lines like this and different sort of organic looking shapes like this. And so rather than spend more time trying to see if that was possible, I'm just going to do it in Google Draw. I know how to do it. I've already spent a lot of time making this digital prototype. I'm just going to do it here. So that's fine. So this is the game board that I made. And I'm going to go over all of the different things that I added to it from my last prototype. But some of the things I wanted to call out about Dextrous, I am loving this program. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. You can do so many cool things. So I wanted to call out that you can pull images. I did mention this briefly before, but you can see here in this column, I just have references to the image file names. And so then that calls on these icons that I imported into Dextrous. And so let me show you here. So I have this icon folder that I made. And then these are all the icons that I imported into Dextrous. And these are all icons that I found from a very cool website called Open Clip Art. Yeah, so this is Open Clip Art. And so everything on this platform is totally okay to use. They have a very clear policy. So open clip art artists are normal people like yourself around the world who find pleasure in freely sharing their artwork with the intention of others using their artwork. So I have been like, yeah, I've been really enjoying this website. I highly recommend it if you want to find icons for your game. So basically I would search for the type of icon I was looking for, and then I would I would upload it into Dextrous. So like I found this cool scroll looking thing, and I found this cool castle and this horse and all this cool stuff. So I imported all of them into the icons folder, and then I reference the image, the file name in here, and then it pulls that into the layout. So that was a really cool thing that I discovered about Dextrous. I knew that was possible, but when I figured out how to do it and actually did it, that was really fun. The other things I wanted to mention is that they do have their own icons in Dextrous. I did learn this after I imported all of these icons. But not all of them are like Creative Commons licenses, so just be aware of that. I believe so. This one should be, yeah. So with the exception of the CCO images, all these stock images are for prototyping, non-commercial purposes only. And so that would be fine because, yeah, this is all just prototype art. I don't plan on, like, if this gets picked up by a publisher, they're going to change all this anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I just prefer just to use Creative Commons icons when I make prototypes if possible. So all of these are already included in Dextrous. So that is very, very cool. A ton of common icons, you know, like the refresh icon and all these different things that I found and imported on my own, and I could have just dragged them from here. But this is just cool to know. But yeah, they do have a ton of other cool icons in here, like characters and things like that, and backgrounds, and you can have a ton of fun in here. So that was a cool discovery that I made about their images section on the Dextrous website. So I made all of these layouts, and then I exported them. So let's pretend I'm exporting this. I would go export, and then so from here, I added the crop marks because I will later on today, I need to print these out. I need to save these and then print them to make a physical prototype. So that's where those will come in handy. But if I'm just exporting for the digital prototype, I just go export and I go generate images. And this will make images because I use Tabletopia. If you use Tabletop Simulator, then you might want to, you'll want to create a Tabletop Simulator file. Or if you use screenatop.gg, you can use that option there. And then here's if you're going to print the files. All right. So let's move on from Dextrous. Yeah, but I just want to say in general, I loved learning more about this program. It is very, very cool. Highly recommend you getting used to this program and learning it because it's very, very powerful, and it's overall very intuitive. Okay, so I exported all of these files and I brought them into Tabletopia, another program that I really, really enjoy, Tabletopia. I have a ton of projects in here. So I created one for the Stolen Crown. This is the game I'm working on. And so one thing I made, and I can't remember exactly who told me about this, but if you create groups, I think it was maybe Travis, if you create groups, you can then drag and drop the entire group into your project. So like if I want to bring in, if I update, or like if I bring in all of the city cards, I can then drag and drop all of them into there rather than doing it one at a time, like I did in one of my previous videos, which took forever. So I made groups for the different components, and then my reference card and all the things that are individual. So I brought them into here, and then I brought them into my setup. One cool thing about Tabletopia, so these are all the other images and files that I imported. They also do have some components in Tabletopia that you can use. So like these bags and these cubes and these tokens and this pawn and so on. And in here I needed heart tokens, and Tabletopia had this shape here. So if you go to home and then you go featured, these are all the different things that you can bring into your game from Tabletopia, which is really handy. And so I believe it was tokens. And inside the tokens folder, I grabbed their coin, their gold coin that's in this bag here. and the heart token here. And then I just used a brown cube for food. And I'll go over these resources in a minute here. But I just wanted to call out that they have that Tabletopia has a bunch of components that you can just use, you can drag and drop from their program as well. Okay, so let's get into the changes that I made to the gameplay for this latest iteration. As mentioned, I added new resources. So in my previous, here, let's make this full screen so you can see a bit better. In my previous version, I just had money as the only resource that you could get, and then you could spend on things. In an effort to, now that I feel like a lot of the core elements of the game are fairly stable, I wanted to introduce a bit more complexity and a bit more decision making and decisions that need to be made in the game and more strategizing. And so one way I am trying to achieve that is by adding in 2 more resource types. And so I have money, but now also I have food and morale. So these are the 3 resources. That has been working well overall. I did try it where the collect action, I had it where you could collect any combination of these 3 things. That then made it just way too easy to get what you needed. It was essentially just having money. If you could get any 3 that you wanted and then spend them, it was not adding that interesting decision space that I wanted it to have. And so instead, I returned back to the collect action here. This one, the collect action. You only get money. And then I had it where I had markets out on the map. I had a market here and here and here, some of the in-between spaces. And I liked the idea of that because it made these in-between spaces more interesting. And then you would have to go to the market to trade. One issue with that, once I play tested it, is that I basically just had Jeffrey, the brown token here, posted up at the market while Matilda just moved around and did stuff and then just had him trade things for me, which is not, the vibe that I'm going for. So I decided to do away with the market, so I got rid of them. And now I added in this merchant ally. So I'm going to try now where every player always starts with this merchant ally. You can see there's no cost because it's the starting ally, and it starts in Angiers, which is where they always start, Matilda and Jeffrey. That is something I played around with them possibly. You could possibly choose where you wanted to place your pawns to start, but I ultimately decided that they're just going to start in Angiers because A, is historically accurate, but B, when I could place my pawns wherever I wanted, I just placed them wherever a couple cool allies I wanted were. So it just made it acquiring the allies way too easy. So this is the only ally that is in Angiers at the start of the game. And then you have to activate it to trade. So you have to be more strategic about when are you going to activate your merchant, because then you have to spend an action to untap it, which is the inspire action here. That, I just play tested it with the merchant for the first time just a half an hour ago, and it did work well. It was very interesting because there were also a couple of points where I only had 1 resource, and I was like, oh, it's not very efficient to use my merchant just for 1 resource, but I really need that 1 resource. Should I do it now or should I wait till I get at least 2 so I'm more efficient? And so it had me thinking of more interesting things, and I had to strategize a bit more. So I am enjoying this so far. It is a new addition, so we'll see. You'll see in the top right corner, I have these resource icons here. That means that's the cost to upgrade. And then you have some preview text of what the upgrade ability is. So the base ability is to trade up to 2 resources 1-to-1. If you upgrade the merchant, you can then trade up to 5 resources. And so you're able to do that if you can pay this cost. I play tested this yesterday, and the cost was way too low to upgrade the allies. And so I increased that, and that's been working a lot better. Let me show you the backside here. So if you were to upgrade it, it just has these little stars to show that it's upgraded. You will notice also I have no art here. You can imagine there'd be a cool picture of like a merchant guy. And also especially on these allies like the mermaid and the dragon and the dwarf. Like I purposefully am not putting art here. And I know a lot of people ask about this, and a lot of designers have different approaches to this. This is my personal approach. I like to keep the art blank, Sometimes I'll just put like the word art, like this is a placeholder for the art, because A, I don't want to be spending time on something that the publisher most likely will change, but B, I want the publisher to have almost like a blank canvas so that they can imagine what they could do with the game, the look and the feel that their artist could give to the game. And if you put in your own art or art that you found somewhere, or even art that you bought, it can sometimes be hard for people to visualize the look and the feel that they will want it to have if there's already a vibe. So I don't have any art here, but I can just imagine how cool that would look with art. Okay, so that is the two new types of resources, morale and food, the merchant that you have to activate to trade. So how are the different ways that you can get resources? There's the collect action, and then you can trade, but also you can get resources from these secure tokens here, or these loot tokens. And so these show how many soldiers are needed to secure the city, and then what you get when you secure the city. And so for this particular one, and all of these tokens would be randomly set out each game, so it would be different each game. So if you're able to, like for this one, if you're able to get 5 soldiers in London, it is secure, you get your stuff. This then flips, and then on the other side, it's just a reminder of how many soldiers are needed to keep that city secure, because you can lose soldiers, Steven can gain soldiers, it can go back and forth, because this is an area majority or area control game. Okay, so you can get resources from the loot tokens, you can get resources from the collect and then trade action, and then some of the allies also give you resources. Like the halfling, the hobbit can get you food, the elf can give you morale, and one of the dragons can get you coins. Okay, so another major change here is the action track rondel, but it's a line. So in a lot of games, in quite a few games, you'll see like a circle, and then people can move around the circle, and whichever section they are in that circle, that's the action they can take, or the resource they can get, or whatever. And I was like, that could be an interesting way for players to acquire their upgraded action tracks. And so these action tracks, if you're able to buy one, go over top of your player map, and then you can actually right click and lock so that it doesn't move around. Now, these are the actions available to you, and they're better than the base ones. Before, I had it where these were all just available to the player at all times, and they were also quite a bit cheaper. Now, also with the differing resources, you have to plan a bit more about like, all right, which track am I going for? Which resources do I need? How am I going to go about getting them? And so what I'm trying now, and this is a bit inspired by, I've been wanting to add a rondel to one of my game designs in general. But the idea of moving along a rondel of cards and like a stack of cards was also inspired by one of the games from the game jam I ran a few weeks ago called Trick or Treasure by Aaron L. It was my top pick of the game jam. And one of the cool things that he had in his game was a rondel of stacks of cards that the player could move around. And then whichever stack they landed on, they could then look at that card. That was, that gave a bit of inspiration for this. So I did try it where it wasn't a circle, but trying to read all this information upside down, it was not easy. So instead I made this rondel line. This is also something I saw in a game called River Market coming out from Roberta Taylor and KTBG, where it's a rondel game, but it's 2 long lines of a river. So it's like a rondel line. And I had never seen that before. And so this also made me think about that. So basically, you have this pawn here, and whichever card it is on at that time, that is the track you can buy. You can't just buy any one that you want. You now need to strategize about getting your pawn onto the track that you want to buy to upgrade your player mat. And the way that you move along this rondel currently, this is what I'm trying. So far it's been working well, I think, but there might be a different way to do this. Let me know if you have any ideas. But you can see at the bottom here, it says players can choose to move their pawn along the upgraded actions line instead of the chosen action. So that is the way that you can move your pawn onto the track that you want to buy. you can be like, okay, I am going to move 1, and then you move, maybe you move Matilda here. But for my second movement, I'm not going to move. I'm going to move the pawn up 1 because I want to upgrade my Inspire track. And one thing I'm trying as well is that you can only upgrade your track at the end of a year. So you'll see these cubes here. These are your spring cubes, summer, fall, and winter. Once you do 4 rounds at the end of the year, you then reset, you bring these cubes back, and you can then buy the track that you are on. So this is also there are a couple reasons for this. One, it was awkward to buy an event track when you had a bunch of cubes on that section already. You had to take the cubes off, put the track on, remember where the cubes were, put them back on. So now, since it happens only at the end of the year when you reset your cubes, it just makes that a bit of a cleaner transition. And then also, one of the reasons I wanted to do this is that I didn't want players to be able to very quickly be able to upgrade a bunch of these. I wanted to slow down the upgrading process. Right now, it possibly might be too slow. So I might need to decrease the costs of these different things. You can see the costs. And then one other kind of interesting thing about this is that these stacks are randomly dealt out. And so you can only collect a track that is uncovered. And so if I were to buy the Inspire track and place that there, now the collect track is available to buy. But currently I'm saying you can only buy this once you've upgraded the first level. You can't go straight to the second level. You have to get the first level and then the next one. So I think that's interesting. I'm not 100% sure, because then it is kind of interesting how you have to strategize about like, okay, I'm going to get that because then it uncovers that. So then I can get that and get that. Like, it could be cool, but with the process being pretty slow and gradual now by only being able to do it in between years, that might not happen because it just takes a while to do it. I'm not quite sure. I think it could be interesting. I might just want to simplify this and just have the Inspire and then have the next level Inspire behind it, rather than having these be random. So that's something I'm keeping an eye on. So another change that I made is, and I know I've been actually, I don't know if I maybe did this last iteration, but all of the allies are fantasy creatures now. Every single one of them. So we've got a mermaid, we've got a unicorn, elf, halfling, dwarf, and so on. I did that for a few reasons. One is it just gives me more flexibility for the different abilities and tying them to a character that makes sense for them. Like the mermaid adds soldiers to the ports, which I thought was fun. But also I did this because it just feeds into the theme of a fantastical reimagining of this historical event that actually happened. And I just think it's just really fun for me personally. This is like a mashup of 2 books or book series that I've been really, really enjoying this year. This year I read When Christ and His Saints Slept, which is about this time in history, the conflict between Matilda and her cousin Stephen for the crown. And then I've read The Hobbit and the first 2 books of the Lord of the Rings series. I just finished the second book last night, which is super fun. So I'm going to start the third one very soon. And so this is kind of a mashup of those books that I've been really, really enjoying this year. So just me personally, I'm stoked about this, how there's a wizard. There's all these fun fantasy creatures in this ally deck. And so I've been really enjoying that mashup of historical fiction and fantasy. One thing I'll also mention too, one of the things that made me even think about adding a fantasy element to this game, which I don't know if I would have otherwise, is I do know of at least I do know of a publisher who is looking for games that feature women in history with a fantasy twist. And so I had already thought of making a game based on Matilda and Stephen before I saw that email from a publisher that says that they're looking for that type of game. But that fantasy twist, I was like, oh, well, that doesn't work for me. But then I was like, wait, could it? I could add a fantasy twist to this. It doesn't have to be completely, historically accurate. It could be cool. So that is kind of cool that I do know there might be a publisher interested in this being a historically accurate game based with a fantasy twist. So we will see. I'm not expecting that to work out with them, but it is cool just to know that there might be a publisher potentially interested in this take on this historical event. Okay, another change that I made is that the number of soldiers needed to secure a city now varies. Before it was always 4. Now it ranges from 4 to 6, which I have been enjoying. So it's not a completely like homogenous thing where it's just always 4. You have to check to see, oh, this city needs 6, and it'll give a bunch of cool stuff. Like, oh, should we go to secure Chartres? Because if we do, we'll get a ton of stuff, but it's going to take 6. But also we can maybe not worry about it for Steven possibly securing it, too soon because it requires 6. We should maybe focus on the ones that need 4 to really defend those ones. So it adds a bit more thinking and interest to securing the different cities. I removed one of the lose conditions. Originally I had it where if you ran out of cards in the deck, this was like a timer, you would lose. You would lose that way. You could also lose if Steven secures 5 cities. So he has 5 of his flags out, which is still one of the conditions. You can see here I have like a crown with a red X over it. That indicates you lose if the 5th of the flags is out. And also you lose if Steven's support gets all the way to the top. Gets all the way to the top. I'll go over this support track because it's also a new addition in a bit. So basically now there's just those 2 lose conditions, and your 1 win condition now is to secure 7 cities. See, there's a crown there showing that that's how you win. So in doing so, I could add more city cards to the deck. Before it had to be like the exact right number that made sense for the timing of the game. Now that doesn't matter. So I added city cards for every single city on the map. So before I didn't have Southampton and a few other cities in the deck. And that was a bit awkward because it was like, well, I'm just going to go secure that city because I know Steven's soldiers will never be added there. So now every single city, Steven's soldiers could deploy there. Speaking of deploying Steven's soldiers, I added this little section here. And so these are the 5 starting soldiers that go out when you start the game, when you set up. But just to show you how this works during the game, I added this because it can sometimes be difficult to remember how many city cards you've turned over. So every time you turn over a city card, you add a soldier to that, one of Steven's soldiers to that city. And so since some of them have icons that show refresh the market like this, you then have to refresh the ally market. And so sometimes when you've done that and you've gone back, you're like, wait, how many city cards have I turned over? So now, before you turn over any cards, you bring out 3 soldiers. And then when you turn over a card, you put out a soldier from here. So then you can easily remember how many soldiers you've put out rather than drawing from the bag and not remembering possibly how many soldiers you've put out already. Okay, so for Steven's support track, this token starts at the bottom. Every time Steven secures a city, so let's say he has 4 soldiers in Dover, so he gets one of his flags there. He also moves up the support track. You can see I put a little flag icon there to remind you to do that every time you put out one of Steven's flags. So this will move up even if you're able to gain majority there and the flag goes back. This will still stay up here. So I wanted to have this here because, if you're able to constantly put Steven's flags back here and you're like, okay, well, there's no way he's going to get all 5 of his flags out before I get 7 of mine out. There's not much tension. But here, this adds that element of tension because every time he secures a city, his support goes up. So even if you're able to, gain majority, you'll still have that tension from this track as well as this track. This track also made a cleaner way to introduce the event cards. The event cards up here. I originally had them mixed in with the city cards, but that just made it, a bit confusing of, okay, do I do this event now, or do I finish deploying the soldiers and then, again, trying to remember how many cards you've put out in between the event card that came up. And also there could be a chance that you turn over, 3 event cards at the very start of the game before you've done anything. And then you're at a huge disadvantage. So I didn't like the timing of them coming out in the game being random. I could have, put them in the deck at particular points, like in Pandemic, where you put the epidemic cards in at specific chunks of the deck, so one's going to come out every 5th of the deck or whatever. I just didn't want to have that extra setup to have to deal with in the game, so I connected them instead to the support track, so you can see the event card icon here. So when Steven has secured 2 cities, it triggers an event. So then you would turn over an event card and you would resolve it. So like, for example, you would need to pay 3 food. And if you're not able to do that, you lose soldiers. So there's going to be 5, like currently I'm just testing the game with these 5, and I'm not going to add in more of these until a lot of other things are very solid in the game. Once the gameplay is not changing very much, I'll add a bunch more of these. And so the support track triggers the events, and it also will trigger turning over more city cards. So at the start of the game, you turn over 3. If you get up to this point, now you're turning over 4 every time. If you get up to this point, you're going to turn over 5, and that's a real bad situation. That's probably not looking very good for you at that point. And if you get to there, you lose. That has been working well. This might, the 5 might be too much. I might need to just take that out. Even the 4 is pretty bad. But like, I really don't want this game to be too easy. I want it to be tough. So I'm going to leave it at 4 and 5 for now and see how that goes. Okay, so I playtested this last night and it was way too easy. Well, not this exact version. I played a previous version where I had the markets, and upgrading the allies was way cheaper. It was just 2 resources and it was way too easy. I won very easily. It was not super fun because of that. There were a couple moments I was like, oh, this is cool, but there was no challenge or tension in the game. And so I was feeling kind of down on it, to be honest. Last night I was like, oh, should I just archive this game and move on? I don't know. I was just kind of feeling a bit deflated after putting all this time into making this digital prototype, playing it, and then it was way too easy. But I knew if I just adjusted a few things and tried it again, it possibly might fix some things. So that's when I upgraded the cost to upgrade allies. I also last night I started with one of the allies, and I started with they're all awesome, but I started with, I think it was this one, a really awesome dragon, and I was able to upgrade it like immediately. I think I also started with 3 random resources. I could collect any 3 resources, and so all of these things just made it way too easy. So now that I made those changes and I tried it again this morning, it was a lot better. It was way harder. I lost. I had 3 cities secured. And yes, Steven won by getting all 5 of these out. And this token was up either here or here. But it was cool because there was a moment where I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do this. It didn't feel like, okay, there's no way I can do this. Possibly slightly. It possibly might be slightly too hard. But in general, I felt like I could have possibly won if I did a few things differently. So yeah, I'm going to print this now. See how long that takes. I'm going to a playtest at my friend's house today. I'm going to have someone else play it. We'll see how it goes. But I'm back on being excited about this game. Last night I was kind of over it, and now I'm back enjoying it. And so this is the roller coaster of iterating and designing games that I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with. But that's kind of the point of this series too, is to show you that, there's a lot of ups and downs that goes into designing a game. I very briefly wanted to show you my to-do document that I have been working on. And so I have this template that I use when I write out the rules, but also where I take my notes. So I have my to-do section. I have, a section for possible titles. And then I have my notes here. So you can see I already have 25 pages of notes on this game. But basically what I do is I'll give them headings like, is this a section on my thoughts, or is this a section from a playtest? So like here's notes from a playtest, and I say, this is what I'm testing. I'll try to include how long it took, and so on. So I just wanted to give you sort of a look to see at my notes. I have not started writing out the rules yet. I think I will soon. I personally like to write them out earlier on in the game just so I can remember all the rule changes that I've made. I have taken a stab at doing the overview. This needs to change. The tagline, I'm saying a fantastical reimagining of Empress Matilda's quest to reclaim her crown. That's probably too long. Let me know if you have any suggestions about that. I need to fill this in as well still. But I am starting to add just little things that I want to remember. I add to the how to play section, just little sort of edge cases and things like that. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you that. I mean, of course, I have a section for playtesters. I need to update this. I have had a few people playtest this already. I want to make sure that I keep their names just in case it does get published. I want to include those in the credits. All right, so I am now going to print this and playtest the physical game today. Hopefully it doesn't take too long to print and cut. I really hope not. We will see. But I will also be showing this game at ProtoCon BC in a couple weeks. And so if you will be there and if you want to try this, you'll be able to play it there. I'll also have a party game with me that I've been testing. And also, now that I have this digital prototype, if you want to playtest this online, let me know. I want to get as many playtests in of this as possible. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I hope this was interesting for you to see how this game is coming along. And I appreciate all of your comments. Thank you so much for all of your suggestions and all of your feedback and letting me know about other games that I might want to check out and things like that. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you in the next video.